In a packed courtroom in New York, a billionaire in a wheelchair is being sued by his own younger brother to seize control of his fortune. As the billionaire sits completely paralyzed by heavy sedatives and his lawyer suddenly remains silent, everyone believes the case is already over. But just as the judge is about to sign the ruling, Abby, a 7-year-old black girl, suddenly stands up from the back row, clutching her worn backpack and declaring, "I have proof." Ignoring the laughter echoing throughout the courtroom, the little girl calmly turns on a small voice recorder, causing the entire cruel conspiracy of the perpetrators to erupt into the open right there before the court. Before we begin, this is a fictional story, written to inspire and uplift. At Memory Stories, we believe the right story, at the right moment, can change everything. Central Park, New York, fall season. The leaves were turning gold and red, drifting down like tired birds. The air had that crisp bite that tells you summer is gone for good. On a wooden bench near the fountain, a man sat alone in a wheelchair. His name was Michael Reynolds, 62 years old, net worth $4 billion. But right now none of that mattered. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the cashmere scarf around his neck. Multiple sclerosis had taken his legs 3 years ago. Now it was working on everything else. Michael watched the joggers pass by, the young couples holding hands, the mothers pushing strollers. Nobody looked at him. Nobody ever did anymore. Being rich, he had learned, was the loneliest thing in the world. A gust of wind swept through the park. His scarf lifted off his neck and flew away, tumbling across the path like a wounded bird. Michael reached out instinctively, but his body wouldn't cooperate. The scarf landed 10 feet away, right in the middle of the walkway. People walked past it. A woman in yoga pants stepped over it without breaking stride. A man in a business suit nearly kicked it aside. Nobody stopped. Michael's jaw tightened. He could buy this entire park if he wanted to, but he couldn't pick up his own scarf. "Hey, mister," a small voice cut through the autumn air. Michael looked up. A little girl was running toward him. She was black, maybe 7 years old, wearing a faded purple jacket that was too big for her. Her hair was pulled back in 2 neat puffs, and she was carrying a plastic pitcher that sloshed with yellow liquid. She scooped up the scarf without hesitation, shook off the dirt, and walked right up to his wheelchair. "Here you go," she said, holding it out with both hands. "The wind is really crazy today, huh?" Michael blinked. For a moment he didn't know what to say. When was the last time a stranger had done something kind for him without wanting something in return? "Thank you," he managed. "That's very nice of you." The girl tilted her head, studying his face with the unfiltered curiosity that only children have. "You look really tired, mister. Like really, really tired. Are you sick or something?" Michael almost laughed. Adults never asked him that. They were too polite, too afraid. But this little girl just said what she saw. "Yes," he admitted, "I am sick, but I'm okay." The girl nodded seriously, like she understood. Then her eyes lit up. "Wait right here." She ran back to a small folding table near the edge of the path. Michael noticed it for the first time, a hand-painted sign taped to the front, "Abby's Lemonade, 50 cents. The girl, Abby, poured a cup and ran back to him. She pressed it into his hands, her small fingers warm against his cold ones. "This one's free," she announced, "because you look like you need it." Michael looked down at the cup. The lemonade was cloudy, and had too many seeds floating in it. It was probably the most unprofessional beverage he had ever been offered. He took a sip. It was sour, way too sour, and somehow it was the best thing he had tasted in years. "Do you like it?" Abby asked, bouncing on her heels. "My grandma taught me the recipe. She says the secret is to not add too much sugar because life is sweet enough already. But I think she just says that because sugar is expensive." Michael smiled, actually smiled. His face felt strange, like it had forgotten how. "It's perfect," he said. Abby grinned so wide her eyes nearly disappeared. She plopped down on the bench next to his wheelchair, her legs swinging back and forth because they couldn't reach the ground. "I'm Abby," she said. "What's your name?" "Michael." "Nice to meet you, Michael. Do you come to the park a lot?" "I haven't seen you before and I'm here almost every day after school. I used to come here all the time," Michael said. "When I was younger. Before," he gestured vaguely at the wheelchair. Abby looked at it thoughtfully. "My friend Marcus at school has a wheelchair too. His is blue. Yours is really fancy though. Does it go fast?" "Not very fast, no. That's too bad. If I had a wheelchair I'd want it to go super fast, like a race car." She made a vrooming sound with her mouth and Michael found himself chuckling. God, when was the last time he had laughed? They talked for almost an hour. Abby told him about her school, about her best friend Kenya, about the stray cat she was secretly feeding behind her apartment building. Michael told her about the stars, how he used to have a telescope on his roof and could name every constellation. No way. Abby's eyes went wide. You can see stars from New York. My grandma says there's too many lights. You can if you know where to look. And if you get high enough above the city. Can you teach me? I want to find the Big Dipper. We learned about it in science class, but I've never actually seen it. Michael hesitated. He had meetings tomorrow, calls with investors, a board presentation next week. But looking at Abby's eager face, all of that seemed very far away. Do you know how to play chess? He asked. Abby shook her head. Is it hard? It can be, but I think you'd be good at it. You're smart. Really? She sat up straighter, proud. My grandma says I'm too smart for my own good. What does that even mean? Michael laughed again. Twice in one day. That had to be some kind of record. Tell you what, he said. If you want, I can teach you. Chess and maybe some stargazing too. We could meet here every Wednesday afternoon. Abby's face lit up like a sunrise. For real? You promise? I promise. She stuck out her pinky finger. Pinky swear. That's how you make it official. Michael looked at her tiny finger. His own hands were shaking, the tremors worse than usual. But he managed to hook his pinky around hers. Pinky swear, he said. From across the park, a man in a dark suit watched them. He was standing near a black SUV, phone pressed to his ear, but his eyes never left Michael's wheelchair. His name was Victor Nash, personal assistant to Michael Reynolds for the past 8 years. Loyal, efficient, indispensable, or at least that's what Michael believed. Victor's expression was unreadable as he watched the old billionaire laugh with the little girl. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Then he turned away, speaking quietly into his phone. Back on the bench, Abby was chattering about her grandmother. She works 2 jobs, but she still makes me breakfast every morning, even when she's really tired. She's the best grandma in the whole world. She sounds wonderful, Michael said. Abby's smile flickered, just for a second. She's been worried lately, though, about money stuff. We might have to move because of something called rent. I don't really understand it, but it makes her cry sometimes when she thinks I'm asleep. Michael's chest tightened. He knew about rent. He owned 12 buildings in Manhattan alone. I'm sorry to hear that, he said quietly. Abby shrugged, trying to look brave. It's okay. Grandma says God will provide, and I'm helping by selling lemonade. I made $3 today. She paused, counting on her fingers. Well, $2.50 now, but still. Michael wanted to say something, wanted to tell her that he could write a check right now that would solve all her grandmother's problems forever, but something stopped him. He didn't want to be a billionaire right now. He just wanted to be Michael, the man who liked stars and chess and really sour lemonade. Wednesday, he said instead. Don't forget. I won't. Abby jumped off the bench, then paused. Hey Michael, thanks for talking to me. Most grown-ups don't really talk to kids. They just kind of talk at us, you know? I know exactly what you mean, Michael said. Most people talk at me too. Abby tilted her head, confused. Then she shrugged and ran back to her lemonade stand. Michael watched her go, something warm spreading through his chest. It felt foreign, uncomfortable almost. It took him a moment to recognize it. Hope. Then his body betrayed him. The spasm came without warning, a violent contraction that seized his entire torso. His hands clenched into fists, his teeth ground together. The cup of lemonade slipped from his fingers and splashed across the pavement. The pain was blinding, white-hot, like someone was twisting his spine with bare hands. He tried to call out, but his voice wouldn't work. Across the park, Victor was still on the phone, his back turned. Footsteps. Small, fast footsteps. Michael. Abby was there. Her small face appeared in his swimming vision, her eyes wide with fear. What's wrong? What do I do? He couldn't answer. The spasm was getting worse, but Abby didn't panic. She grabbed his hand, her tiny fingers squeezing tight. With her other hand she fumbled in his jacket pocket until she found his phone. How do I call 911? She asked, her voice shaking but determined. Is it just the numbers? Michael, stay with me, okay? I'm going to get help. She dialed. Michael heard her voice, high and scared but clear. Hello? My friend is really sick. We're in Central Park by the fountain. Please hurry, please. He can't move and he looks really bad. Her hand never left his. She held on like she was afraid he would float away. Victor finally noticed. He came running over, his face showing perfect concern. Mr. Reynolds, sir, what happened? I was just on a call I didn't see. But by then the ambulance sirens were already wailing in the distance, and Abby was still holding Michael's hand, whispering over and over, "It's okay, it's gonna be okay, I'm right here, I'm not going anywhere." The last thing Michael saw before the paramedics arrived was her face, small and scared but stubborn. Nobody had held his hand in 30 years. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long time he wasn't afraid. 6 months passed like pages turning in a well-loved book. Every Wednesday at 4 o'clock Michael Reynolds wheeled himself to the same bench in Central Park, and every Wednesday Abby was already there waiting, her lemonade stand set up, her smile bright enough to cut through any gray sky. The chess lessons started simple. Michael taught her how each piece moved, using stories to make her remember. "The knight is like a horse with hiccups," he explained. "It jumps in an L shape because it can never go straight." Abby laughed so hard she knocked over 3 pawns. "That's the silliest thing I've ever heard." "Silly, but you'll never forget it now, will you?" She didn't. Within 2 months she was beating him in short games, not because he let her win but because her mind worked in ways that surprised him constantly. "Check," she announced one afternoon, moving her bishop with confident fingers. Michael stared at the board. He hadn't seen that coming at all. "Where did you learn that move?" "I didn't learn it, I just saw it." She shrugged like it was obvious. "You always protect your queen too much, Michael. Sometimes you gotta let the important pieces take risks." He leaned back in his wheelchair, genuinely impressed. 7 years old and already understanding sacrifice. This kid was something special. Between moves Abby talked. She talked about everything. Her teacher Mrs. Patterson, who always smelled like coffee. Her friend Kenya, who could do a backflip off the swings. The stray cat she had named Whiskers, who now showed up every night for dinner scraps. "Grandma pretends she doesn't know about Whiskers," Abby confided. "But I saw her leave out extra tuna last week. She's not as sneaky as she thinks." Michael listened to every word. He memorized the names of her classmates, her favorite subjects, her dreams. She wanted to be an astronaut, or maybe a chef, or maybe both. "Can you cook in space?" she asked seriously. "I don't see why not. Astronauts have to eat." "Then that's what I'll do. Space chef, first one ever." She moved her rook. "Your turn." What Abby didn't know was that Michael had been busy too, not just with chess. 3 weeks after their first meeting, he made a phone call. Anonymous, untraceable. By the end of that month her grandmother's rent debt had vanished. The landlord received a cashier's check with no return address, just a typed note that said, "Paid in full." Abby mentioned it one Wednesday, her eyes wide with wonder. Something crazy happened. Grandma was crying again, but this time she was happy crying. She said an angel paid our rent. "Do you believe in angels, Michael?" His throat tightened. "I believe good things happen to good people sometimes. Grandma thinks it was a church thing, but none of the churches we called knew anything about it." She squinted at him suspiciously. "You're not an angel, are you? You don't have wings or anything." Michael laughed, but his heart ached in the best way. "No wings, just a wheelchair." He didn't stop there. A scholarship appeared at Abby's school for underprivileged students showing exceptional academic promise, full tuition through high school. The donation came from a foundation nobody had heard of. Abby got the letter 2 months later. "They picked me." She practically tackled his wheelchair, waving the paper in his face. "They said I was smart. Me, can you believe it?" Grandma cried so hard she used up all our tissues. Michael held the letter, pretending to read it for the first time. "Well, of course they picked you. Anyone who can beat me at chess deserves a scholarship. I beat you like 5 times already." "Exactly. They should give you 2 scholarships." In the Reynolds mansion across town, only one person knew the truth about these Wednesday meetings. Rosa had worked for Michael for 15 years. She came from Mexico City, sent money home to her sisters, and had never once broken his trust. When she first saw Michael preparing for the park visits, packing the chess set, choosing which scarf to wear, she knew something had changed. "You're smiling," she said one morning, setting down his breakfast tray. "Real smiling, not the smile you use for business people." Michael looked up from his eggs. "Is that so unusual?" "Sir, in 15 years I can count on one hand how many times I've seen you smile like this." She paused, her weathered hands folded in front of her apron. "Who is she?" He told her everything. About Abby, about the lemonade, about the chess games in the park. Rosa listened without interrupting, and when he finished, her eyes were wet. "She sounds like a gift from God," Rosa said quietly. "She is. She's the only real thing in my life right now, Rosa. The only person who talks to me like I'm just Michael, not Reynolds, not the company, just a man who likes chess and stars." Rosa nodded slowly. "I won't tell anyone, sir. Not a soul in this house. Thank you. She hesitated at the door. Be careful, there are people here who don't wish you well, people who watch. Michael knew exactly who she meant. His brother James had started showing up more often lately. Every few days James would appear at the mansion unannounced, always with the same concerned expression, always asking about Michael's health. You look tired, brother, James said during one visit, settling into a leather chair in the study. The doctors say your condition is progressing, don't they? Perhaps you should step back from the company. Let someone else carry the burden. Michael studied his brother's face. They had the same father, the same gray eyes, but something in James had always been different, harder, hungrier. I'm fine, James, just the usual symptoms. Are you, though? James leaned forward, his voice dripping with false concern. I spoke to Victor yesterday. He says you've been forgetting meetings, losing track of conversations. That's not like you, Michael. Something cold crawled down Michael's spine. You spoke to Victor about my health. Someone has to look out for you. You're so busy with your little projects, you don't notice what's happening to your own body. James smiled, but it never reached his eyes. Family has to stick together. After James left, Michael sat alone in his study for a long time. His memory was getting worse. He knew that. Sometimes he couldn't remember what he had for breakfast. Sometimes he lost entire conversations, whole chunks of the day just gone like someone had erased them. But mess didn't work like that. His doctors had told him the progression would be physical, not mental, so why was his mind slipping? He pulled open his desk drawer and found a leather journal he hadn't used in years. His hand trembled as he wrote the date at the top of the first page. Something is wrong, he wrote. I don't know what, but something is very wrong. From that day on, he documented everything, every pill he took, every meal, every symptom. He noted when his memory failed and what he had been doing before. He recorded his conversations with James, with Victor, with his doctors, and then he did something that surprised even himself. He bought a small recording device, no bigger than a pen, and installed it in the arm of his wheelchair. If something was happening to him, if someone was doing something to him, he wanted proof. It was probably paranoia. It was probably just the disease making him suspicious. But Rose's words echoed in his mind. There are people here who don't wish you well. Victor Nash was one of those people. Every Tuesday night after Michael went to bed, Victor made a phone call, always to the same number, always to James Reynolds. He went to the park again, Victor reported, standing by the window of his small apartment. Spent 3 hours with the girl. She's becoming a problem. A child. James's voice crackled through the phone. My brother is worth $4 billion and he's playing chess with some kid from the slums. Every Wednesday, like clockwork. Keep watching him. Document everything. When the time comes, I want to know every weakness. James paused. How's his memory? Victor smiled slightly. Getting worse every week. The new medication is working exactly as planned. Good. Keep me informed. The line went dead. Victor pocketed his phone and stared out at the city lights. He felt nothing. Michael Reynolds had given him a job, a salary, a purpose, but none of that mattered. James was offering something better, a percentage of the company when Michael was finally declared incompetent. Loyalty, Victor had learned long ago, was just a matter of price. On their 24th Wednesday together, the autumn had returned, almost exactly a year since they had first met. Abby arrived at the park to find Michael already waiting, a small velvet box resting on the chessboard. What's that? She asked, eyes wide. A present, for you. But it's not my birthday. Does it have to be your birthday to get a present from a friend? Abby considered this. I guess not. Grandma says presents are better when they're surprises anyway. She opened the box carefully, like it might contain something fragile. Inside, resting on white silk, was a silver bracelet. Simple, elegant, with a small charm in the shape of a letter. W, Abby read aloud. What does W mean? Wednesday, Michael said. It's a promise. As long as you wear that bracelet, I promise we'll always meet on Wednesdays. No matter what happens. Abby's lower lip trembled. She wasn't a crier, not usually. But something about the way Michael said those words, no matter what happens, made her chest feel tight. Are you going somewhere? She asked quietly. Michael reached out and took her hand. His fingers were trembling, weaker than they had been 6 months ago. I'm not going anywhere, Abby, but life is unpredictable, and I want you to know that our friendship, these Wednesdays, they're the most important thing in my world right now. She threw her arms around him, her small body pressed against his chest, her face buried in his shoulder. I love you, Michael, she whispered. You're like the grandpa I never had. Michael closed his eyes. his arms wrapped around her, holding on as tight as his weakened body would allow. "I love you too, Abby," he said. "More than you'll ever know." Above them, the autumn leaves continued to fall. Somewhere across the city, James Reynolds was making plans. Victor Nash was taking notes. The wheels of betrayal were turning. But in that moment, in that park, there was only an old man, a little girl, and a silver bracelet that meant everything. Wednesday. Their day. Their promise. No matter what. 3 weeks after Michael gave Abby the silver bracelet, the seizure came without warning. It happened in his study, late at night. One moment he was writing in his treatment journal, documenting another day of memory gaps and strange fatigue. The next moment, his body betrayed him completely. The convulsions were violent, throwing him from his wheelchair onto the cold marble floor. His limbs twisted at unnatural angles. His teeth clamped down so hard he tasted blood. Somewhere far away he heard Rosa screaming his name. Then everything went black. He woke up in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed with clinical indifference. His body felt like it had been filled with wet sand. Every breath was an effort. A doctor stood at the foot of his bed, studying a chart with a troubled expression. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm Dr. Patterson. You gave us quite a scare last night." The doctor paused, choosing his words carefully. "We found something unusual in your blood work. There's a foreign substance in your system that we can't immediately identify. We're running more tests." Michael's mind, foggy as it was, caught on those words. Foreign substance. What kind? "We're not sure yet. It could be a reaction to your medication, or it could be something else entirely." Dr. Patterson looked uncomfortable. "Has anyone had access to your prescriptions? Anyone who might have altered them?" Before Michael could answer, the door swung open. James Reynolds strode in like he owned the place. Behind him came Rebecca, Michael's ex-wife. She was still beautiful at 53, blonde hair perfectly styled, designer dress clinging to her figure. They had divorced 12 years ago, and she had walked away with $20 million. Apparently that wasn't enough. "Brother." James rushed to the bedside, his face arranged in an expression of deep concern. "We came as soon as we heard. How are you feeling? You look terrible." Rebecca hung back, her eyes scanning the room, not looking at Michael, looking for something else. "Where are his personal effects?" she asked the nurse. "His documents. We need to make sure everything is in order." Michael's stomach turned. They weren't here for him. They were here for what he owned. "I'm fine, James," he managed, his voice weak. "Just a bad episode. The doctors are running tests." "Tests? Yes," James nodded gravely. "Dr. Patterson, may I speak with you outside, about my brother's condition?" The two men stepped out. Through the glass window, Michael watched them talking. James was doing most of the speaking, his hands moving emphatically. The doctor's expression grew more troubled by the minute. Rebecca finally approached the bed. She didn't touch him, didn't offer comfort. She simply stared down at him with cold calculation. "You should have listened to me 12 years ago," she said quietly. "I told you to put everything in a trust. Now look at you, helpless, pathetic. What do you want, Rebecca?" She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I want what I'm owed, Michael. We all do." Over the next 2 days, Michael learned the truth. James and Rebecca had already contacted lawyers. They were filing paperwork to have him declared mentally incompetent, claiming his memory loss and erratic behavior proved he could no longer manage his own affairs. If they succeeded, James would become his legal guardian. James would control his money, his company, his entire life, and there was nothing Michael could do to stop them. On the 3rd day, something wonderful happened, and then something terrible. Abby appeared at his hospital door, clutching a bouquet of wild flowers she had picked from the park. Her purple jacket was wrinkled, her hair slightly messy. She must have come straight from school. "Michael," she rushed toward him, her face lighting up with relief. "I went to the park on Wednesday, and you weren't there. I asked everyone, and nobody knew where you were. Then Rosa called Grandma and told us you were sick, and I made her bring me right away because I was so worried." Michael's heart swelled. Despite everything, despite the poison in his blood and the vultures circling his fortune, this little girl had come to find him with flowers from the park. "Abby," he whispered, "you shouldn't be here." "Why not? You're my friend. Friends visit each other when they're sick. That's what friends do." She started arranging the wildflowers in a plastic cup on his bedside table. Purple ones, yellow ones, white ones with little spots on the petals. "These are from our park," she explained. "I picked the prettiest ones I could find. Grandma says flowers have healing powers, not real powers like magic, but they make people feel better, which is kind of the same thing." For a moment Michael forgot about James and Rebecca. He forgot about the foreign substance in his blood. He just watched this 7-year-old girl arranging wildflowers with the seriousness of a surgeon performing an operation. Then the door burst open. James stood in the doorway, his face twisted with disgust. He looked at Abby like she was an insect that had crawled into his food. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. "Who let this child in here?" Abby froze, the flowers still in her hands. She had never seen anyone look at her with such hatred. "I'm Abby," she said quietly. "I'm Michael's friend." "Friend?" James laughed, but it was an ugly sound. "You filthy little urchin from the slums. Who gave you permission to be here? This is a private room. Security." "James, stop." Michael tried to sit up, but his body wouldn't cooperate. "She's just a child. She's a street rat. Look at her. Dirty clothes, dirty hands, coming in here with her weeds like she belongs." James grabbed Abby's arm roughly. Get out before I have you arrested." Abby's flowers scattered across the floor. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't make a sound. She just looked at Michael with those big brown eyes, silently begging him to help her. A security guard appeared and led Abby away. Michael watched her go, his heart breaking with every step she took. "Don't you ever speak to her like that again," he said to James, his voice shaking with rage. James smoothed his jacket, already dismissing the incident. "You need rest, brother. The doctors say stress is bad for your condition. We'll talk tomorrow about the paperwork." That night Michael knew he was running out of time. James was moving fast. The lawyers would come tomorrow. After that he might not have any control over his own life. He waited until the nurses changed shifts, then grabbed his phone with trembling fingers. Rosa answered on the second ring. "Mr. Reynolds? Is everything okay?" "Rosa, listen carefully. I don't have much time." Michael spoke quickly, forcing his foggy brain to focus. "In my study, behind the bookshelf, there's a purple folder. Inside is my treatment journal, my voice recorder, and a letter. I need you to take it to Abby, tonight." "Abby? The little girl? She's the only one I trust, Rosa. Please. James is trying to take everything. He's doing something to my medication. I know it, and nobody will believe me because they think I'm crazy." Rosa was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I will do it, sir. Tonight. I promise. Tell her to hide it. Tell her not to trust anyone. And tell her." Michael's voice cracked. "Tell her I'm sorry about the flowers." At 11 o'clock that night, Rosa knocked on the door of a small apartment in Brooklyn. Abby's grandmother answered, confused and worried. "I need to see Abby," Rosa said. "It's about Mr. Reynolds. It's urgent." Abby appeared in the doorway, still wearing her school clothes. Her eyes were red from crying. Rosa handed her the purple folder. It was heavier than Abby expected. "Mr. Michael told me to give this to you," Rosa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hide it well. Don't trust anyone. He is putting all his hope in you, child." Abby clutched the folder to her chest. "Is Michael going to be okay?" Rosa's eyes filled with tears. She didn't answer. She just turned and disappeared into the night. Alone in her small bedroom, Abby opened the folder. Inside she found a leather journal, a small recording device that looked like a pen, and a sealed envelope with her name written on it in shaky handwriting. She opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. Michael's handwriting was messy, harder to read than usual, but she understood every word. "Dear Abby," the letter began. "If you are reading this, it means I am in danger. You are the only person I trust." Abby's hands trembled. She kept reading, her heart pounding faster with every sentence. Outside her window the city lights flickered like distant stars. Somewhere across town, James Reynolds was celebrating his victory. He had no idea that a 7-year-old girl in Brooklyn was holding the evidence that would destroy him. Abby read Michael's letter 7 times that night. Each time the words hit her harder. Someone was hurting her friend. Someone was poisoning him. And somehow, impossibly, Michael believed that she was the only one who could help. She was 7 years old. She didn't understand lawyers or courts or poison, but she understood one thing perfectly: Michael needed her. 2 weeks later, the courtroom of the New York State Supreme Court was filled with expensive suits and legal jargon. The hearing to declare Michael Reynolds mentally incompetent was about to begin. Judge Elena Martinez presided over the proceedings. She was 50 years old, a black woman with silver streaks in her hair and eyes that had seen every kind of lie the wealthy could buy. Her reputation for fairness was legendary, but even the fairest judge could only rule on the evidence presented, and today all the evidence pointed in one direction. James Reynolds sat at the petitioner's table, looking appropriately somber. Rebecca sat behind him, already calculating how to spend the money. Victor Nash was there too, ready to testify about Michael's declining mental state. Michael himself sat in a wheelchair at the respondent's table, but he might as well have been a mannequin. His eyes were glazed, unfocused, staring at nothing. His mouth hung slightly open. His hands lay limp in his lap. The doctors had given him sedatives that morning. For his own safety, they said. To keep him calm during the proceedings, they said. But everyone could see the truth. Michael Reynolds had been drugged into silence. His lawyer, a man named Harrison Wells, sat beside him without speaking. Wells was supposed to defend Michael, supposed to fight for his rights. But James had gotten to him first. A wire transfer of $200,000 had ensured that Wells would mount no real defense. Judge Martinez opened the proceedings with her usual formality. We are here today to consider the petition filed by James Reynolds to be appointed legal guardian of his brother Michael Reynolds on grounds of mental incapacity. Mr. Reynolds, you may present your case. James stood up, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. Thank you, Your Honor. It brings me no pleasure to be here today. Michael is my brother and I love him dearly. But the evidence will show that his mental deterioration has reached a point where he can no longer manage his own affairs. He presented document after document, medical reports showing cognitive decline, testimony from doctors about memory loss and confusion, financial records showing strange transactions that suggested impaired judgment. My brother has become paranoid, James explained, his voice heavy with fake sorrow. He believes people are following him. He thinks his medication is being tampered with. These are classic symptoms of dementia-related psychosis. The courtroom nodded along. It all made perfect sense. Then James played his trump card. We have also discovered that my brother has been conducting a secret relationship with a minor child from a troubled neighborhood. He meets her in the park. He gives her expensive gifts. This behavior, Your Honor, is deeply concerning and suggests he is no longer capable of appropriate social judgment. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Even Judge Martinez raised an eyebrow. Michael sat there, drugged and helpless, unable to defend himself or his friendship with Abby. A single tear rolled down his cheek, but nobody noticed. Judge Martinez turned to the defense table. Mr. Wells, does your client wish to respond to these allegations? Harrison Wells stood up slowly. He looked at Michael, then at James, then back at the judge. Your Honor, given my client's current condition, we have no objection to the petition. We believe Mr. James Reynolds is acting in his brother's best interest. No objection. 3 words that would steal Michael's entire life. Judge Martinez frowned. Something felt wrong to her, but she had seen no evidence to support her instinct. The petition was in order. The medical documents were signed. The lawyer was not objecting. Very well, she said, reaching for her pen. Based on the evidence presented, I am prepared to sign the order granting guardianship to Wait. The courtroom doors burst open. Every head turned. A little girl stood in the doorway, clutching an old backpack to her chest. Her purple jacket was wrinkled, her hair slightly messy. She was breathing hard like she had been running. Abby had arrived. Your Honor, she shouted, her voice high and clear. I have evidence. The bailiff moved toward her, but Judge Martinez held up her hand. There was something about this child, something in her determined eyes, that made the judge pause. Young lady, this is a closed proceeding. How did you get in here? Abby walked forward, her small sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. She was terrified. Her knees were shaking, but she kept walking. My name is Abby, she said. Michael Reynolds is my friend, and someone is hurting him. James shot to his feet. This is outrageous. Your Honor, this is the very child I was talking about. She has clearly been manipulated by my brother's delusions. Sit down, Mr. Reynolds. Judge Martinez's voice was sharp. She looked at Abby with curious eyes. Child, what evidence do you have? Abby opened her backpack with trembling fingers. Michael gave me this. He told me to keep it safe. He told me people were trying to hurt him and I didn't understand, but now I do. She pulled out the voice recorder, the small device that looked like a pen. Rosa had taught her how to use it, had made her practice over and over until she could do it with her eyes closed. I don't know how courts work, Abby admitted, her voice wavering. I'm only 7, but Michael said this would show the truth. Can I play it? Judge Martinez leaned forward. Bailiff, bring me that device. James jumped up again. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We have no idea what's on that recording. It could be fabricated. It could be.
Mr. Reynolds, I said sit down. The judge's tone left no room for argument.
She took the recorder from the bailiff and examined it. Is there an objection from the defense? Harrison Wells opened his mouth but no words came out. He hadn't prepared for this. No objection, Your Honor, he finally mumbled. Judge Martinez pressed play. The courtroom fell silent as James's voice filled the room. The new medication is working exactly as planned. His memory is getting worse every week. By the time we get to court, he won't even remember his own name. Then Victor's voice. Are you sure about the dosage? If we give him too much, it might be obvious. James again. Just keep switching his pills. The doctors think it's the MS. Nobody suspects a thing. In a few months I'll have full control of everything. The recording continued, damning word after damning word. James discussing how to forge medical reports. Victor explaining how he replaced Michael's real medication with something else. Rebecca asking how long until she could access the accounts. Every voice in that room heard the conspiracy laid bare. James's face went white. He looked at Abby with pure hatred, but the little girl stood her ground. There's more, Abby said. She reached into her backpack again and pulled out 2 small medicine bottles. Rosa, Michael's helper, she switched the fake pills with the real ones when nobody was looking. She gave them to me. She held up both bottles. This one has the real medicine. This one has the fake stuff James was giving Michael. You can test them. You'll see. The courtroom erupted. James was shouting about conspiracies and manipulation. Rebecca was trying to slip toward the exit. Victor looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Judge Martinez banged her gavel 3 times. Order. I will have order in this courtroom. The noise subsided. The judge stared at the medicine bottles, at the recorder, at the drugged man in the wheelchair who was just beginning to show signs of awareness. This court is in recess, she announced. I am ordering an immediate investigation into the allegations raised by this evidence. The pills will be tested by an independent laboratory. Mr. James Reynolds, you are to be detained for questioning. Mr. Nash, you as well. Bailiffs moved toward James and Victor. Rebecca tried to run, but she didn't get far. Furthermore, Judge Martinez continued. Michael Reynolds is to be transferred immediately to an independent medical facility for evaluation and treatment. No family members are to have access until the investigation is complete. She looked down at Abby, her expression softening for the first time all day. Young lady, what you did today was very brave. This court thanks you for your courage. Abby didn't understand most of what the judge said, but she understood that Michael was safe now. That was all that mattered. She ran to his wheelchair and grabbed his hand. His fingers were weak, but they squeezed back. Michael, she whispered. Can you hear me? It's Abby. You're going to be okay now. Michael's eyes focused on her face. For the first time in weeks he truly saw something. He saw the little girl who had given him lemonade in the park. The little girl who had held his hand during a seizure. The little girl who had just saved his life. Abby, he breathed. You came. I promised, she said, touching the silver bracelet on her wrist. Wednesday, remember, I always keep my promises. Outside the courtroom, police cars were arriving. Investigators would spend months untangling the conspiracy. James would eventually face charges, though his expensive lawyers would delay justice for years. But none of that mattered right now. Right now there was only an old man and a little girl, holding hands in a courtroom full of chaos, connected by something stronger than money or power or blood. Trust. 5 years passed like a river flowing gently toward the sea. Abby was 12 now, taller than she had been but still wearing that same stubborn expression that Michael had fallen in love with at first sight. Her hair was longer, pulled back in neat braids that her grandmother spent every Sunday morning perfecting. Her voice had grown stronger too, the voice of a girl who had stood before 300 adults and changed the fate of a corporation. Michael kept his promise to give back. 6 months after the shareholder meeting, construction began on the Reynolds Education Center, right in the heart of Abby's neighborhood in Brooklyn. Where there had once been an abandoned warehouse covered in graffiti, there now stood a gleaming 3-story building filled with computers, books, and dreams. Free tutoring for any child who wanted it. Scholarship programs for college. Job training for parents. Michael poured millions into the center, but he never put his name on the front door. The community knew anyway. Every Saturday morning, Michael would wheel himself into the center's main hall and teach a class. Not business exactly, but something more valuable. He taught the kids about responsibility, about using power to help others, about the difference between being rich and being wealthy and the things that mattered. Abby never missed a single session. What's the most important quality in a leader? Michael asked one morning, looking out at the dozen children gathered around him. Hands shot up everywhere. Being smart, having money, being tough. Abby raised her hand last. Caring about people more than you care about yourself. Michael smiled. And how did you learn that, Abby? From watching you, she said simply. After class they would sit in his office and talk about her future. Abby had discovered a new passion over the past few years, something that surprised even her grandmother. She wanted to study law. I want to protect people, she explained one afternoon, flipping through a book about famous court cases, like what happened in the courtroom when I was 7. That judge, Judge Martinez, she made sure the truth came out. She made sure the bad guys couldn't win just because they had more money. I want to do that. Michael nodded slowly. Law is a difficult path. Long years of study. Lots of people who will try to stop you. I don't care. Her jaw said in that familiar way. When they tried to take everything from you, nobody was there to fight back. Your own lawyer betrayed you. If I had been a real lawyer, I could have done more. I could have stopped them sooner. You stopped them just fine as a 7-year-old with a backpack. Next time I want to stop them before they even start. Michael felt his heart swell with pride. This girl, this extraordinary girl, had taken the worst experience of her life and turned it into purpose. Meanwhile, justice finally caught up with James Reynolds. The trial lasted 8 months. Prosecutors presented evidence of poisoning, financial fraud, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and half a dozen other charges. James hired the best lawyers money could buy, but even they couldn't overcome the recording Abby had played in court 5 years earlier. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in federal prison. Rebecca got off lighter. Her lawyers argued that she had been manipulated by James, that she was merely a passive participant in his schemes. The court didn't fully believe her, but they showed mercy. 2,000 hours of community service, working at homeless shelters and soup kitchens. The newspapers called it justice. Michael called it a start. On Abby's 12th birthday, Michael made another decision. He called her grandmother and asked permission to formally become Abby's godfather. Not adoption, he clarified quickly. I know Abby wants to stay with you. I would never try to take her away from her home. But I want to be officially part of her life. I want to help provide for her future. Abby's grandmother was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Mr. Reynolds, you already saved my grandbaby's life. You gave us back our home. You gave her a future she never could have dreamed of. If you want to be her godfather, I would be honored. The ceremony was small and private. Just Michael, Abby, her grandmother, Rosa, and David Chen gathered in the living room of Abby's apartment. No cameras, no reporters, no press releases. Michael gave Abby a new charm for her silver bracelet. It was shaped like a book, to represent her love of learning. You're my goddaughter now, he said, his voice thick with emotion. That means I'll always be here for you, no matter what. I know, Abby said, hugging him carefully around his wheelchair. You always have been. But not everyone celebrated this bond. In a prison cell in upstate New York, James Reynolds received a visitor. His son Derek was 25 years old now, with his father's sharp features and his grandfather's cold eyes. He had inherited the family ambition but had learned to hide it better than his father ever could. They took everything from us, James said through the glass partition, his voice bitter. The company, the reputation, the money, all because of that little girl. Not everything, Derek replied calmly. You still have 35% of Rain Solutions stock. The courts couldn't touch that. Stock I can't vote because I'm in here. For now. Derek leaned closer. Be patient, father. I've been watching, learning. The old man is getting sicker. His MS is progressing faster than the doctors expected. And when he's gone, that girl will inherit control of the Reynolds Foundation. $2 billion. Handed to a teenager. James's eyes narrowed. What are you planning? Nothing yet. Just watching. Waiting for the right moment. Derek stood up to leave. Victor Nash got out of prison last month. He's been in touch. He still has contacts inside the Reynolds household. A slow smile spread across James's face. My clever boy. I learned from the best, father. Rest up. When you get out, everything will be ready. Derek walked out of the prison and into the autumn sunshine. He pulled out his phone and made a call. It's me, he said. Keep watching the girl. I want to know everything about her life, her friends, her routines, her weaknesses. When the time comes, I want no surprises. Back in New York, Michael sat alone in his study, staring at a document he had been working on for months. It was his new will, completely rewritten from the version James had tried to steal years ago. The MS was taking more from him every day. His legs had stopped working entirely last year. His hands trembled so badly he could barely hold a pen. Some mornings he couldn't remember where he was. The doctors had given him their honest assessment. End stage. Maybe 2 years, maybe less. He read through the will one more time, making sure every word was perfect. When Abby turned 21, she would assume control of the Reynolds Foundation. $2 billion dedicated to helping children and protecting the elderly. Not his company, not his personal fortune, but his legacy. He trusted her completely. She was the only one who had never wanted anything from him except his friendship. David Chen notarized the will that afternoon. Rosa witnessed it. Everything was official. Are you sure about this? David asked. She's just a child. She won't be a child forever. And when she's ready, she'll do more good with that money than I ever could. Michael smiled sadly. She's the best thing that ever happened to me, David. The only good thing. The call came on a Tuesday night in November. Abby's grandmother had collapsed in the kitchen while making dinner. By the time the ambulance arrived, she was already gone. A stroke, the doctors said. Quick and painless. She probably never felt a thing. Abby stood in the hospital hallway, numb and silent, still wearing her school uniform. She had been at debate practice when Rosa came to get her. The whole drive over, she had prayed it was a mistake. Her grandmother was strong. Her grandmother was invincible. Her grandmother couldn't just be gone. But she was. Michael arrived within the hour, wheeling himself through the hospital corridors as fast as his weakened arms could manage. He found Abby sitting alone in a waiting room, staring at nothing. He didn't say anything. He just wheeled up beside her and took her hand. They sat like that for a long time, two people who had lost everyone else in the world, holding on to each other in the fluorescent silence. The funeral was 3 days later. It was small and beautiful, filled with neighbors and church friends and children from the education center who had loved Abby's grandmother almost as much as Abby did. Abby stood at the graveside, clutching a handful of wild flowers, the same kind she had picked for Michael in the hospital all those years ago. Michael sat beside her in his wheelchair, wrapped in the same cashmere scarf she had picked up in Central Park when she was 7. After everyone else had left, they stayed behind together. "I don't have anyone now," Abby whispered, her voice cracking. "She was all I had." Michael squeezed her hand. His fingers were weak, but his grip was firm with purpose. "That's not true," he said quietly. "You have me, and I have you." He pulled her close as his wheelchair would allow. "You are my only family now, Abby, and I am your only family. We will face whatever comes together." Abby buried her face in his shoulder and cried. Not the silent tears she had been holding back for days, but deep shaking sobs that came from somewhere she didn't know existed. Michael held her through all of it. This 12-year-old girl who had already been through more than most adults ever would. Behind them, the autumn sun was setting over Brooklyn. Somewhere in the distance, a phone rang in Derek Reynolds' pocket. "The grandmother is dead," said the voice on the other end. "The girl is alone now." Derek smiled. "Perfect. Keep watching." The storm was coming, but for now all Abby knew was the warmth of Michael's arms, and the promise that she would never be truly alone. 6 more years flowed past like water through open fingers. Abby was 18 now, a freshman at Columbia Law School. She had grown into a striking young woman, tall and confident, with her grandmother's warm eyes and Michael's stubborn determination. The silver bracelet still hung from her wrist, now heavy with charms that marked every milestone of her journey. Michael was 73, and the MS had finally won. His body had become a prison. He couldn't move his arms anymore. He couldn't speak above a whisper. Most days he drifted in and out of consciousness, trapped somewhere between sleep and waking. But every Wednesday, no matter how bad things got, Abby came to sit beside his bed. She would read to him from her law textbooks, explaining cases and precedents as if he could still understand. She would tell him about her classes, her professors, her dreams of becoming a civil rights attorney. Sometimes she would just hold his hand and talk about nothing at all. On the last Wednesday, Michael opened his eyes and saw her clearly for the first time in weeks. "Abby," he breathed, his voice barely audible. She leaned closer, tears already forming. "I'm here, Michael. I'm right here." His lips moved slowly, each word costing him tremendous effort. "Thank you for the lemonade that day." Abby's hand tightened around his. "What do you mean?" "It saved my soul." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I was so alone for so long. Then you came, with your terrible lemonade, and everything changed." "It wasn't terrible," Abby whispered through her tears. "You said it was perfect." "It was, because you made it." His eyes started to close. "I love you, my little girl. I love you too, so much. Please don't go." But Michael Reynolds was already gone, slipping away as peacefully as a leaf falling from a tree. His hand grew still in hers. His chest stopped rising. Abby sat there holding him until the sun went down, until the nurses came to gently take him away. 11 years of Wednesdays ended in a single breath. The will was read 3 days later. Michael had left his personal fortune to various charities. His company shares went into a trust for medical research. But the Reynolds Foundation, worth $2 billion, would transfer to Abby's control when she turned 21. She inherited no personal money, not a single dollar for herself, just the responsibility of continuing his legacy. Derek Reynolds had other plans. James had died in prison 2 years earlier, bitter and broken to the end. But his son had inherited more than just his ambition. Derek had spent the past decade building his own business empire, cultivating connections, and waiting for exactly this moment. The lawsuit came 1 month after Michael's funeral. Derek filed papers accusing Abby of psychological manipulation, claiming she had exploited an elderly man's loneliness to gain control of billions. His lawyers painted a devastating picture of a calculating young woman who had targeted Michael from their very first meeting in the park. The media loved it. Headlines screamed across every tabloid and news website. Black girl from the slums bewitches billionaire. Gold digger or guardian angel. The lemonade scheme, how one child manipulated her way to billions. Abby watched the coverage from her tiny dorm room, feeling like the walls were closing in. Everything she and Michael had shared, every Wednesday afternoon, every chess game, every conversation about stars and dreams was being twisted into something ugly and false. Then Victor Nash appeared on television. He sat across from a sympathetic interviewer, looking reformed and regretful, and told lie after lie about what he had witnessed during his years in the Reynolds household. She was calculating from the start, Victor said, shaking his head sadly. I watched her manipulate that poor old man for years. She knew exactly what she was doing. Every smile, every hug, every visit was designed to make him dependent on her. Abby turned off the television and made a decision. She would not hide, she would not run, and she would not let anyone else fight her battles. The next morning she filed papers with the court announcing that she would represent herself. No lawyers, no legal team, just an 18-year-old law student against a corporate empire. The judge assigned to the case was skeptical. Miss Reynolds, do you understand the complexity of this lawsuit? The opposing counsel has decades of experience. I understand, Your Honor, but nobody knows this case better than I do. Nobody knows Michael better than I did. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Derek's lawyers presented their case with polished precision. They showed financial records, medical reports, and testimony from experts who had never met Michael Reynolds. They painted Abby as a sophisticated con artist, who had spent 11 years executing the perfect scheme. Then it was Abby's turn. Her first witness was Judge Elena Martinez, now retired, the same woman who had presided over the guardianship hearing 11 years earlier. I remember that day clearly, Martinez testified. A 7-year-old girl burst into my courtroom with evidence that saved a man's life. There was no calculation in her eyes, only courage and love for her friend. Rosa testified next, her voice breaking as she described the Wednesdays she had witnessed, the genuine joy Michael found in Abby's company, and the way he had spoken about her when she wasn't around. He called her his angel, Rosa said. Not because of money, because she made him feel human again. For the first time in 30 years, he had someone who saw him as a person, not a checkbook. Then Abby took the stand herself. She brought Michael's leather journal, the same one he had started writing in all those years ago when he first suspected something was wrong. But she didn't read from the pages about poison and conspiracy. She turned to the very first entry. This was written on October 15th, the day after Michael and I met in the park, she said, her voice steady despite the cameras and the crowded courtroom. I'd like to read it to the court. She cleared her throat and began. Today I met a child. Her name is Abby. She gave me a cup of lemonade because she thought I looked tired. It was too sour and full of seeds, and it was the best thing anyone has given me in decades. For the first time in 30 years, I did not feel alone. I don't know why this little girl stopped for me when everyone else walked past, but I am grateful, so incredibly grateful. Maybe there is still kindness in this world after all. The courtroom was silent. Abby closed the journal and looked at Derek, who sat frozen at the plaintiff's table. This is who Michael was, she said. A lonely man who found joy in a cup of lemonade. I never asked him for anything. I never expected anything. I just wanted to play chess with my friend every Wednesday. She turned to the judge. The Reynolds Foundation has distributed over $400 million in the past 5 years. Every penny has gone to education programs, elder care facilities, and children's hospitals. I have never taken $1 for personal use. My dorm room costs $800 a month. I work part-time at the campus library. I own 3 pairs of jeans. She held up financial records she had prepared herself. This is the foundation's complete accounting. This is my personal bank statement. The truth is right here in black and white. The defense had one final move. David Chen, still loyal after all these years, had been investigating Derek since the lawsuit began. He had found something devastating. Your Honor, Abby said, I would like to submit evidence showing that Derek Reynolds has received payments totaling $15 million from the Harrington Corporation over the past 3 years. The same corporation that tried to take over Rain Solutions with his father. The same corporation that would benefit most from destroying the Reynolds Foundation. Derek's lawyers objected. The judge overruled them. The evidence was damning. Wire transfers, emails, recorded phone calls. Derek hadn't filed this lawsuit out of family loyalty. He had been paid to destroy Abby's reputation and tear down everything Michael had built. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and read the verdict in a clear voice. "We find in favor of the defendant, Abigail Reynolds, on all counts." The courtroom erupted. Journalists rushed for the exits. Derek sat motionless, watching his world collapse. Furthermore, the judge announced, "Based on the evidence presented, I am referring Derek Reynolds and Victor Nash to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of perjury, fraud, and conspiracy." Abby stood alone at the defense table, trembling with exhaustion and relief. She touched the silver bracelet on her wrist, the one with the W charm that Michael had given her so many years ago. She had done it. She had protected his legacy with her own 2 hands. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded her with cameras and microphones, but Abby had only one thing to say. "Michael Reynolds saved my life when I was 7 years old. He believed in me when nobody else did. Everything I am, everything I will become, is because of him." She looked directly into the camera. "This foundation will continue his work. I will make sure of it, until my last breath." She walked down the courthouse steps alone, 18 years old, carrying the weight of $2 billion and 11 years of love on her shoulders. Wednesday was coming, and she had work to do. 15 years transformed Abby Reynolds from a grieving law student into one of the most powerful women in America. The journey wasn't easy. After winning the lawsuit against Derek, she had thrown herself into the Reynolds Foundation with a determination that bordered on obsession. Every dollar Michael had entrusted to her went exactly where he would have wanted it to go. She built elder care facilities in forgotten neighborhoods where senior citizens had nobody to protect them. She funded after-school programs for children growing up the way she had, with empty refrigerators and uncertain futures. She created legal aid clinics that helped families fight back against predators who targeted the vulnerable. By the time she was 25, the Reynolds Foundation had become the largest charitable organization in America, dedicated to protecting the elderly and abandoned children. By 30, it had expanded internationally, with programs in 12 countries and an annual budget that exceeded $500 million. But Abby wanted more. She wanted laws that would prevent people like James and Derek from ever hurting anyone again. She wanted systemic change, not just charity, so she ran for office. The campaign was brutal. Her opponents dug up every old headline, every racist tabloid story from her lawsuit days. They called her unqualified, inexperienced, too young to understand how politics really worked. Abby responded, the only way she knew how. She told her story. She stood in front of crowds and talked about a lonely billionaire, a cup of lemonade, and 11 years of Wednesdays that had changed everything. People listened. People believed. Washington, D.C., the Capitol building. A crisp January morning, Abby Reynolds stood on the steps of the Senate chamber, her right hand raised, her left hand resting on a worn leather journal. It was Michael's journal, the same one she had read from in court all those years ago. "I do solemnly swear," she repeated after the Chief Justice, "that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God." The crowd erupted in applause. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks. Senator Abby Reynolds of New York had officially taken her seat. She was 33 years old, the youngest senator in the chamber, and only the third black woman ever elected to represent New York in the United States Senate. Her first piece of legislation was already written, drafted during long nights in her small apartment while the campaign raged around her. She called it the Reynolds Act, a comprehensive law designed to prevent elder abuse in all its forms. The bill mandated criminal background checks for all caregivers. It created a national registry of abuse offenders. It established severe penalties for financial exploitation of seniors and required banks to flag suspicious transactions involving elderly account holders. Most importantly, it gave families the legal tools to fight back before it was too late. The Reynolds Act passed the Senate with a bipartisan majority 6 months after Abby took office. When the president signed it into law, Abby stood behind him in the Oval Office, clutching her silver bracelet and thinking about a man who had almost lost everything because nobody was watching out for him. "This one's for you, Michael." Years passed. Abby's influence grew. She became known as the senator who actually kept her promises, who showed up at town halls and remembered constituents' names, who fought for bills that would never make headlines but would change real lives. But no matter how busy she got, no matter how many meetings filled her calendar, Abby always found time for one ritual. Every October 15th, the anniversary of the day she met Michael, she returned to Central Park. This year was no different. The autumn air was crisp and golden, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant hot dogs. The park was quieter than usual, most people hurrying home before the evening chill set in. Abby walked along the familiar paths, past the fountain where children threw pennies and made wishes, past the bench where dog walkers gathered to gossip until she reached the spot. The same wooden bench, the same view of the trees, the same place where a 7-year-old girl had picked up a stranger's scarf and changed the course of 2 lives forever. She sat down heavily, feeling the weight of 15 years pressing on her shoulders. On her lap was a folded cashmere scarf, old and faded now, but still soft. Michael's scarf. The one that had blown away on that autumn day so long ago. She never went anywhere without it. For a while she just sat there, watching the leaves fall, remembering Michael's laugh, his terrible chest jokes, the way his eyes lit up whenever she walked into a room. God, she missed him. After all these years she still missed him every single day. A small voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me, ma'am, would you like to buy some lemonade?" Abby looked up and her heart stopped. A little boy stood before her, maybe 8 years old. He was thin, wearing clothes that were slightly too big for him, and carrying a plastic pitcher filled with pale yellow liquid. His face was earnest and hopeful, with the kind of determined expression that Abby recognized instantly. She had worn that same expression once, but that wasn't what made her breath catch in her throat. Behind the boy, an elderly woman sat in a wheelchair near the path. Her hat had blown off in the wind and landed a few feet away. She was reaching for it helplessly, unable to stand, while people walked past without stopping. The boy set down his pitcher and ran to help her. Abby watched him pick up the hat, dust it off carefully, and place it gently back on the woman's head. The old woman smiled and patted his cheek gratefully. The boy smiled back, then returned to his lemonade stand as if nothing remarkable had happened. But Abby knew better. She knew exactly how remarkable it was. She stood up and walked over to the boy's table. The sign was handwritten on cardboard, just like hers had been. "Fresh lemonade, 50 cents. "I'd like one, please," Abby said softly. The boy poured her a cup with careful concentration. It was cloudy and had too many seeds floating in it. Absolutely perfect. Abby took a sip. Too sour, just like Michael had probably thought all those years ago. She smiled. "What's your name?" she asked. "Marcus," the boy said. "I'm saving up for new shoes. My mom works 2 jobs, but shoes are expensive, you know." "I know." Abby reached into her pocket and pulled out something she had carried with her for 26 years. The Reynolds family ring, a simple gold band with the letter R engraved on its face. Michael had given it to her on her 10th birthday. She placed it in Marcus's small palm. The boy stared at it, confused. "What's this for?" "You remind me of someone," Abby said gently. "Someone who taught me that kindness is the most powerful thing in the world." She closed his fingers around the ring. "If you ever need anything at all, I want you to go to the Reynolds Education Center on Atlantic Avenue. Show them this ring. Tell them Abby sent you." Marcus's eyes went wide. "The Reynolds Center. My mom took me there once. They helped her get a better job." "I'm glad to hear that." Abby smiled, her heart full to bursting. "Keep being kind, Marcus. Keep helping people who need it. You never know whose life you might change." She paid for her lemonade, leaving a $100 bill on the table before Marcus could protest. Then she walked back to the bench and sat down again, the cup warm in her hands, Michael's scarf draped over her shoulders. The sun was setting over Central Park, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Somewhere in the distance she could hear children laughing, dogs barking, life going on the way it always did. Abby closed her eyes and let herself remember. A lonely man in a wheelchair. A little girl with a pitcher of lemonade. A scarf caught by the wind. A friendship that defied every expectation. A love that transcended death. This is your legacy, Michael. Not the money, not the buildings, not the laws. This moment, this boy. This kindness passing from one generation to the next, like a river that never stops flowing. She opened her eyes and looked at the lemonade in her hand, then at the scarf on her shoulders, then at the little boy in the distance who was already helping another stranger pick up something they had dropped. One small act of kindness, that's all it took to change the world. Abby Reynolds smiled through her tears and whispered into the autumn air. "Thank you, Michael, for everything." The wind carried her words away, scattering them like seeds across the city. And somewhere, somehow, she knew he heard her. And just like that, the story comes to a close, leaving behind a lesson we often forget. Kindness costs nothing, but its value is beyond measure. A cup of lemonade, a scarf picked up from the ground, a moment of simple human connection. That's all it took to save 2 souls who didn't know they needed saving. Michael found his reason to live. Abby found her purpose, and the world gained a reminder that we are never too small to make a difference, and never too broken to be healed by love. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe so you never miss another story. And tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced a moment when a stranger's kindness changed your life? I'd love to hear your story.